In 1716, in a London prison, a 17-year-old boy is waiting to be executed. His crime is treason. His sentence, by one family account, is to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. He is the son of a Scottish baron, and his family has just lost everything: title, castle, lands, name. The boy does not hang. Instead, the crown puts him on a ship and throws him away to Virginia, where 30 years later this convicted traitor will hold a surveyor's chain steady and hand the other end to a 16-year-old named George Washington. This is the story of how Britain exiled a rebel, and the rebel helped measure out the country that would defeat Britain. This is the story of George Hume, my seventh great-grandfather. George Hume was born in May of 1698 at Wedderburn Castle in Berwickshire, in the Scottish borders, a landscape of feuds, raids, and long memories. The homes of Wedderburn were not minor gentry. They had held these lands for centuries. An ancestor had kept the books of the Scottish Exchequer for King James VI. They had a baronetcy from Charles I. They had standing, history, and a castle with their name on it. They also had a fatal loyalty to the exiled House of Stuart. In 1715, the Jacobites rose to put James Stuart, the Old Pretender, on the British throne. George's father, the Laird of Wedderburn, joined the rising and took his teenage son with him. George served in his father's own command. He was 17 years old. The rebellion collapsed. At Preston in England, the Jacobite force surrendered, and the Humes fell with it, captured, imprisoned, ruined. The father was convicted of high treason. The baronetcy was forfeited by attainder. The estates were confiscated. 600 years of accumulation, gone in a single season's gamble. George spent 2 years in prison. By family tradition, his death sentence was commuted to transportation, banishment to the colonies, the empire's method for converting its enemies into its labor force. He was put aboard a merchant ship as, effectively, indentured cargo. Consider what he was at that moment: a second son, a convict, an aristocrat with no inheritance, no title, no country. The crown had decided he was worth more as a field hand in Virginia than as a corpse in London. It would prove to be a spectacular miscalculation of his value. He landed in Virginia in 1721, in poor health and worse circumstances. But George Hume had something most transported convicts did not: relatives in high places. His cousin was Alexander Spotswood, the lieutenant governor of Virginia. Spotswood had already rescued one exiled Hume, George's uncle Francis, another Jacobite prisoner from Preston, whom the governor had freed and restored to the rank of gentleman. Now the family network caught George too. Spotswood took the young man under his care and made a decision that changed everything. The boy had studied mathematics in Scotland, so Spotswood sent him to school. At the College of William and Mary, George Hume trained and qualified in the one profession colonial Virginia could not get enough of: surveying. By 1723, he was licensed. Understand what a surveyor was in that world. Virginia was a colony made of land claims, and a claim was worthless until a surveyor walked it, chained it, and drew it. The surveyor stood at the exact point where wilderness became property. It was a vital profession in 1723, and the convicted traitor was about to become very good at it. 1727 and 28, as surveyor for Spotsylvania County, Hume laid out a brand new town at the falls of the Rappahannock, 64 lots carved from 50 acres. He named its streets for the royal family he had once taken up arms against. The town was Fredericksburg. That same year he married Elizabeth Proctor, whose dowry included 2,000 acres. And then the resurrection got stranger. The Jacobite rebel took an oath as a lieutenant of colonial militia. He became a vestryman of the Anglican parish, and in 1733 he was paid 100 pounds of tobacco to align the new Fredericksburg church properly east to west, as Anglican law required. The man who fought to overthrow the Protestant succession was now, quite literally, orienting its churches. Through the 1730s and 40s, Hume's chain moved west with the colony. Spotswood had secured him a deputy surveyorship in the Northern Neck Proprietary, the immense Fairfax family grant that covered everything between the Potomac and the Rappahannock. From 1743 to 1750, he surveyed directly for Lord Fairfax himself, and he served as surveyor for Orange, Frederick, Spotsylvania, and Culpeper counties in turn. This was the exact moment the Great Migration was pouring down the Valley of Virginia, Scots, Irish, and German families streaming along the Great Wagon Road onto frontier land. Somebody had to turn that flood into deeds, boundaries, and farms. That somebody, across a huge swath of the Piedmont and Valley, was George Hume. The exile was drawing the map his fellow emigrants would live on. In 1748, an ambitious 16-year-old showed up in Hume's orbit, a Fairfax protege with good connections, a talent for mathematics, and a need for a profession. His name was George Washington. For the next 2 years, Washington worked as Hume's deputy in the country that was becoming Culpeper County. They ran lines together on the Fairfax lands. Surviving surveys carry both names, Hume as surveyor, Washington as his assistant. In 1749, at 17, Washington was appointed Culpeper County's own surveyor, his craft shaped by one of the most experienced chainmen in Virginia. Hume finished his career as a crown surveyor, commissioned under King George II, the son of the king he'd rebelled against. When Culpeper County was formed in 1749, he moved there and spent his last decade running its lines and acquiring land of his own, including grants from Lord Fairfax. All his life he wrote letters home to Scotland, to the family that kept the name Wedderburn but had lost the estates. Those letters survive, a window into a Virginia exile's world. He wrote his last one in April of 1760. By June, his estate was in probate, divided among his sons. He died in Culpeper County, 62 years old, birthplace, a Scottish castle, burial place, Fredericksburg, Virginia, a British colony. Step back, and the shape of the story emerges. Britain took a 17-year-old aristocrat, stripped him of everything, sentenced him to die, and then, as an act of economy, not mercy, shipped him off as convict labor. Virginia took the same man and made him the instrument that converted its wilderness into a society. The towns platted, the counties bounded, the frontier parceled out to 100,000 migrating families. His descendants spread across the American South. His apprentice became the first president of a nation built, in no small part, on land that men like Hume had measured into existence. Some of his boundary lines are still in use today. The Crown thought it was disposing of a traitor. It was actually exporting a founder. George Hume never got Wedderburn back. The castle still stands in Scotland, a wedding venue now, hosting other people's new beginnings. But maybe that's the point. Empires decide who is disposable. They are frequently wrong. A boy who was supposed to die in London instead drew the property lines of a new world and taught the man who would take it away from them how to hold the chain straight. The rebel they banished found and measured America. This is one of many stories about the connection between people in the present and the past. I think it is exciting to discover ancestors and place them in the historical context of their time. Please subscribe below to this channel for future portrayals. I have several of my ancestors in mind, and if you have ancestors of your own, please send me your suggestions in the comments section.